Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk 87,000 pink slips. Please welcome, from Missouri, Chairman of the House Committee on Ways and Means, Jason Smith, and Distinguished Visiting Fellow at the Hoover Institution, Kevin Hassett.
Thank you. Well, this is the most exciting part of the day. We get to do taxes and economics at the same time. You know, I gotta set the record straight though, and by the way, I'm Kevin Hassett. This is Jason Smith, in case you didn't know. Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, really the most powerful Republican in town right now, I would say, as much as Kevin McCarthy, because you've got so many fights to fight. But I want to set the record straight to start with, that a lot of people say that Joe Biden's policies are not going to create any jobs. But it's not true. As an economist, I could tell you that he has an $80 billion bill that creates 87,000 jobs for the IRS. And if you look at the details of what they're doing, I find it absolutely chilling. Because one of the things they're funding is using artificial intelligence to take information about you from wherever, from your Facebook page, wherever, combining it with your tax data so that they can go around and audit, every American. It's Big Brother on steroids. Well, I've noticed, Jason, that you disagree with this policy and that you've been trying to stand up to it. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
I would say I more than disagree with this policy. It's great to be with a bunch of conservatives, right? You have definitely raised the IQ level in Washington, D.C. by just being here. So we are grateful that you're here. 87,000 IRS employees, agents, whatever you want to call it. Joe Biden has been pushing this policy since his very first president's budget. His very first president's budget, he highlighted that he wanted $80 billion of new money to hire 87,000 IRS employees. But he also put in there that he wanted to do what I refer to as the bank snooping bill. And that is, if there's an amount of 10,000 or more inflow or outflow of your bank account, it's going to be reported to the IRS. It's all about government command and control over your lives is what this administration and what the Democrat Party is trying to do, to just be completely honest. And so the Ways and Means Committee has not been a committee known for oversight, but the very first bill that we did from our committee was to eliminate that $80 billion. That was the first bill we did in the entire House of Representatives. But we got to keep up the drumbeat, because the Ways and Means Committee has jurisdiction over the IRS. And my first week as chairman, I set up this whistleblower hotline that any employee of the IRS could contact us and let us know if there's something they think we should be looking into that may not just be right, that they don't feel comfortable to tell the folks at the top. We've been getting some good stuff, I will just tell you. And so stay tuned, because our committee, we're going to be very aggressive on oversight, and we're going to expose what this administration is trying to do in targeting real Americans. And that is not going to be stood for in this Congress. We are going to be pushing back tooth and nail, I can tell you that.
Thank you so much for that. And we were talking backstage that when Hillary Clinton first went into the White House as First Lady, one of the things she did is she asked the IRS to give her the tax returns of the Clintons' enemies. This is public. And she got them. And more recently, your colleagues decided to release the tax return for a former president. The IRS has been hacked over and over, so that probably most people in this room, the Russians and the Chinese have their tax data. And ProPublica has been writing articles about the tax returns of private citizens. What are you doing to stop that?
We have already started the investigation. Over 19 months ago, there was a leak of almost 1,000 taxpayers' information by ProPublica. It came from somewhere, and still we've heard crickets from the IRS of how did this leak happen? It just happened to be the same time, within the same week, this administration was trying to push tax increases on those same 1,000 people that their tax returns released. But it's not just that. There was 113,000 taxpayers' retirement information that was posted on a website by the IRS. And then they figured out they did it wrong after 8 months and took it down and was supposed to rework it so there wasn't confidential information, and they posted the same thing again, twice. If you have that kind of disrespect for people's private tax information and retirement information, there's a problem at the IRS. And we got to figure that out.
That's right. And one of the problems that you could actually, if you go to the IRS website and look at it, one of the problems is that because they're trying to rake in as much cash as they can from everybody, they share information with foreign governments. And so in 2021, the IRS shared the tax information of Americans with foreign governments or other entities in the government 27 billion times. 27 billion times. And so this is a problem that, thank goodness that you're on the case. But another thing that you've done recently that I've noticed that really fills my heart with joy is that there was an article in Politico, if I remember correctly, that said that when you came in and you announced that you're going to put the American people and blue-collar workers first, that it sent all the lobbyists in Washington into a tizzy. I'm quoting. And so I think that you should put that on your tombstone. I hope it's a long ways off. But I'm so proud of you for putting lobbyists in a tizzy.
Put K Street on a tizzy.
Yeah, but how did you put them on a tizzy? And what does it mean that they're in a tizzy?
It's crazy that it's news that if a member of Congress or a chairman of a committee is going to prioritize the working class, small businesses and farmers as their top priorities when they're developing policies when it comes to tax, trade, and healthcare, why does that make these lobbyists in a tizzy? That tells you exactly how broken Washington, D.C. is. I mean, that is how broken it is. And the place that I represent is God's country. I know we all live in God's country, but Southeast Missouri, Cape Girardeau, home of Rush Limbaugh, you might have all heard of him. So we're very glad to have him from our great area. And I was raised the same way he was, from a working class background, and that's who I represent. And we need to make sure our policies up here are reflected to deliver for working class families.
So the one thing I want to say, though, is that I live in D.C., and I consider D.C. God's country, too. We D.C. residents are not the problem.
I think we might disagree with
I'm just saying, we D.C. residents are not the problem. It's the people you guys keep sending to us, like Joe Biden. That's the problem. But you were chairman of the Budget Committee. And you were chairman of the Budget Committee while the Democrats were being as irresponsible about the budget as any government in U.S. history. And I think people don't understand the scale of what Joe Biden and the Democrats have done before you guys came in. And I wonder if you could talk about how they've increased spending, how they've increased the deficit, and so on. Just give us some of the numbers.
Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer did a very good job during the 2 years that they were one-party control of doing everything wrong. That's exactly what they were doing. Every policy that they made was the wrong policy for our country. In those 2 years, they added more than $10 trillion of new spending. That's not even counting the spending to fund government and keep the lights on. This was just on top of it. $10 trillion. And when you think about it from that perspective, and what did you get for it? You got the highest inflation in 41 years. Inflation's gone up 14.4% since Joe Biden's taken the oath of office. That means it's costing everyone in this room to pay more to put food on their table, clothes on their backs, or gasoline in their cars. And you know what they spent that money on? $780+ million was checks to federal prisoners and stimulus checks. $1,400 stimulus checks to Japanese citizens who live in Japan. They did luxury golf courses, beach bathrooms in South Carolina, moonshine walking trails. Those are the items that was spent in their projects. That is why you're paying more to put food on your table, clothes on your backs, and gasoline in the cars. I am so thankful that we fired Speaker Pelosi, because at least we got a dead stop here. I'll tell you, the last time Republicans were in the majority, we had this, I was the conference secretary, and I got this letter when we lost the majority from Speaker Pelosi, and she was kicking me out of my Capitol office as a member of leadership, because that's when the Democrats took control. You know what I did to that? I framed it, and I put that letter on my wall in my office. And I said, just as Nancy Pelosi kicked me out of my office, I'm going to kick her. She no longer has that office. So I am so thankful for this country and for the people that I represent, that we can actually have a chance.
You know, one of the things that I love most about the Ways and Means Committee, and especially the group that you're leading, is that, you know, we're really good at carping about the awful things that they've been doing, but we're also really good of thinking about fixing things. And I look forward to a time not that far into the distant future where you're able to legislate and you're going to have a president who's going to sign what you're doing. And rather than just talk about all the depressing facts, which are, you know, probably going to still be depressing over the next year or two, I wonder if you could talk about your plan to fix all this. So what is it that would be a top priority for you, you know, when you're running the Ways and Means Committee with a friendly president and so on?
You know, the very first committee hearing that I did as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee was not in Washington, D.C. I did it in Petersburg, West Virginia. How about that, right?
Hello, Petersburg.
You know, we need to make sure that the policies that we developed aren't the policies developed by the lobbyists and the well-connected. It needs to be by real Americans. And so that's why I went to a lumber yard in Petersburg, West Virginia, and I heard from real small business owners, coal miners, and mothers who was telling us of the issues that they're facing in this economy and how we should create those solutions. My next committee meeting is in Oklahoma City Tuesday morning. It's called the State of America's Economy in the Heartland. The best solutions are not in Washington. The best solution amongst the entire American public. And so that is the policies we're developing to deliver for working class families, small businesses, and farmers. And that is exactly what will make our country even stronger. We are the backbone of the economy is the hardworking everyday American. And so the policies that we're going to do in tax policy is going to be crafted from going to Petersburg, to Oklahoma City, and then other places. And they will be policies that I know that will help bring back our strategic supply chains. We should not be dependent on China for our pharmaceuticals, or for our food security, or for our energy security, critical minerals. And we need to use tax and trade policies to make sure that if we cannot produce those items in our country, it needs to be in countries that are our friends, and China's not our friend. And we should know that, seeing a balloon flying over my congressional district, that's not something that we need to be happy. And so making sure that we're using economic policies, tax policies, trade, and then address healthcare. Access to healthcare is extremely important. In my congressional district, you can go 2 hours before you find a physician, or even a hospital. The lifespan of folks that live in rural areas is much less than those that live in urban areas. It's because they die of the basic necessities that a lot of folks just don't have. We want affordability of healthcare, but we want access as well. And you should not be punished because of the zip code you live in. We should all have the same opportunity, and that is what I'm going to be fighting for as a Ways and Means chairman.
You know, one last question. So there's so much to talk about in terms of the failure of the Biden administration on economics. They call inflation the cruelest tax, but their taxes are pretty cruel too. You know, I wonder what you think if you know, I as an economist could think of lots of different things to talk about, but most of them are totally uninteresting to voters. I wonder what you think the main theme, economic theme of the next election cycle is going to be, given the failures of the Biden administration.
Well, I think the theme of the next presidential election is going to be based on how the economy that they have presented, as you all know. And it doesn't look that great of where the economy's going. And so I think that is what's going to dictate the theme. But let me tell you, we have a pretty good record of what we need to do to turn this country and this economy around. And the policies that President Trump did from 2016 to 20 in reducing government regulations, like 22-1 at one point, and then passing the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, that unleashed the economy to the lowest unemployment in a generation. It led to the highest increase in paychecks in a generation. Those are the policies that work. Those are the policies that win. That's what we need to do.
I agree. Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your time and for coming to CPAC, and you've given us so much hope for the future. Now we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we can give you the authority you need to fix all this stuff.
We'll do it.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.